Hello, everyone. Tony here. US equity markets concluded last week on a subdued note as uncertainty loomed ahead of the weekend's US China trade discussions. Anticipation ahead of the discussions were dampened by President Trump's comment on Friday night that an 80% tariff on Chinese imports seems right. Though that figure is considerably lower than the 145%, it still has the effective tariff rate on imports coming into the US at close to 20%, which does suggest we still have downside risks to US growth. Now, following those 2 days of negotiations over the weekend, reports indicate that substantial progress has been made. And what we've effectively seen at this point is the US and China have committed to ongoing discussions. And while no immediate tariff reductions have been confirmed, the White House has promised to provide a comprehensive briefing later today to outline the specifics of the agreements. This news, along with reports that India and Pakistan have agreed to a ceasefire, and also news that Russian President Putin and the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, are planning to meet later this week in Turkey for direct peace talks, has boosted US equity futures. And in the reopening, we're seeing US equity futures trading about 1.15% higher at 57.45. Now, let's take a look at the charts of the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ to see where they stand as we start this new week. All right, so to recap something we chatted about last week, you can see that the decline in the NASDAQ has unfolded in three waves. Here's your wave one or A, your wave two or wave B. This is Elliott wave we're referring to again, and then wave three or wave C down to this April low. Now, the rebound has also at this point unfolded in three waves. So it makes it very hard to use Elliott wave to get a firm read on whether this has been the correction or this is a counter trend correction. So what we need to do is to try and step back. And again, we're going to lean on this 200-day moving average, which comes in around 20,181. Now, I'm using the cash chart. I've mentioned that previously we have problems with the roll using TradingView. So for me, this gives us a cleaner read on where things stand. With the way that US equity futures have reopened this morning, the NASDAQ futures are trading above here, but we want to see that either confirmed or rejected when the floor opens tonight. So in a nutshell, if we were to close back below this 200-day moving average on the cash chart and on the futures chart, that'd be a pretty good sign we've seen some rejection of this 200-day moving average. And if we were to take out this wave A or one high over here at around 19,234, I think it would give us a pretty firm indication that this has been a corrective rally and that we can retest the lows. However, if we start to see some acceleration above this 200-day moving average, then we're probably looking for this leg higher to become a wave three. And in terms of how much further a wave three can go, well, it probably pushes up to this area here, and we're looking at a retest of the record highs. Likewise, for the S&P 500, a three-wave decline from the record highs. This is your wave three, and a three-wave rally, which makes things confusing from an Elliott wave perspective. So again, we refer to the 200-day moving average. Now, futures, as we've mentioned, have opened higher this morning. They are testing this 200-day moving average. But like we mentioned, there is issues with the rollover using the futures chart for TradingView, and instead we'll revert back to this cash chart here. So what I'm looking for now is whether we reject this 200-day moving average in the S&P 500 and then take out this 54.81 high, in which case I have a pretty good, a pretty high conviction view that we're going to trade lower and retest this 48.35 low. Conversely, if the if the S&P futures and the S&P cash get above this 200-day moving average and build some exception, we're probably looking this rally from the April lows to unfold in five waves. Here's your wave three now, and then we'd be looking for a retest of this 61.47 record high. Thank you for listening and have a great week ahead.